just really interested in talking to Laura of Brightly. I'll give everyone a moment to come on here because there were a lot of really great questions just about making more sustainable swaps as parents and just in general. So we're going to make sure to get to all of that and wait for, of course, Laura to come on here. Really loved last week's episode with Prep and Rally because I feel like she really encouraged me to just get back in the kitchen. And you guys bought a lot of her books as well as a ton of Dr. Becky's books. So the books seem to be a thing and something that I'm going to continue doing in the newsletter. So I'm really thrilled about that. And I myself also love buying books. Hey, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? I'm just gonna
Good. It's always fun figuring out Instagram.
Isn't it a joy to do every week?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for taking time to come on here. I was just like browsing all the different ways to make different swaps on the Brightly page. So these are just like all such great ideas. And I know we're going to talk about all of that, but also just more kind of focused on the mom things because
Yeah.
I know myself as a new mom, just the amount of waste that goes into all the things that we use every single day as moms. And there were so many awesome questions just about how to reduce specific kinds of waste as parents, but also just in general. And obviously you do such a great job with the Brightly account of making those very simple and easy to digest tips. But why don't we first just talk a little bit about Brightly and the whole concept and point behind it, which is awesome.
Yeah. That sounds great. Yeah. And it's funny, like, everybody may or may not be aware, I had my first baby almost a year ago. Her birthday's October 23rd. And I remember like thinking about I guess, like, I want to say conflict between being the founder of a brand like Brightly and understanding like all of the stuff that was going to come my way. And when I tell you, I started to get a complex, I definitely did. So we'll talk about that and kind of talk about like a few things that I did and things that I recommend other people to do. But yeah, just to really to take a step back, I mean, Brightly was founded with the concept of wanting to make everybody feel like they could live eco-friendly lifestyles and that they could do it without judgment. So I think, even just a few years ago, the people that mostly were talking about this were the ones who were taking really what we'd call like super eco lifestyle, changes. So like going totally vegan or saying they weren't going to buy anything for an entire year. And like, it was almost like something that everybody was standing off to the sidelines and witnessing, unless you were like in a specific area of the country, right? Where it's like more popular to be a vegan or whatever. And I really felt like the vast majority of people really would be better served by talking about these topics from a more realistic perspective and thinking through like, what can the average person do, whether it's, comes down to price, accessibility. A lot of people around the country don't have access to things like organic produce and things like we do here on the coast. I'm in Seattle. I know you're over in LA. But yeah, I mean, for me, it was just always part of this mission to really inspire billions of conscious consumers rather than like, a few thousand like amazingly eco people, right? Which we love them, but it's just not realistic for most.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also, like intimidating for a lot of people, like the idea of you see people who are just living these incredibly eco-friendly lives and you're like, that sounds amazing, but also maybe it's just not possible for
Yeah.
you. And I think one of the really great things about the account of Brightly and also just what you're talking about and what you're doing is encouraging people that, you can make little changes and take small steps to living a more eco-friendly life. And
Yeah.
if that's swapping out your makeup remover wipes or, doing something different with, your waste at your house, like just little things you can do that make swapping easier and more approachable and also digestible is really awesome. And I think when you were kind of touching on the, as you were kind of entering into becoming a mom and all the things that were going to kind of come your way, I'm interested kind of what you came across in your thought process there with how to kind of deal with that, because it's so true. Every single time someone says they're having a baby or they're going to become a parent or they're pregnant, it's like you want to get them something, you want to send them what they need, but it is a lot.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I mean that's the first thing people do, right? Like in
Yeah.
addition to like being excited that you're pregnant, they're like, "Okay, now I'm going to give you a lot of stuff." And like
Mhm.
maybe some of the stuff you've registered for, but a lot of it you haven't, you know, like and it's like everybody is so well-meaning and I feel like they, you know, I think a lot of like you know, what we do at Brightly also is like think about the culture of consumption that we live in and like I think especially with like older like our parents' generation, they've kind of associated like love and like you know like caring and everything like that with things so it's like oh my gosh I love you here's a bunch of stuff right I'm sure you've gotten so many outfits from people that are just like okay you know like these mean really well but they're like not the cutest thing ever like what you know they don't even fit I think a lot of
Right.
times that would happen for me like we got all these outfits and they didn't even fit my little girl Brooksley she's like a huge chunk she came out and was like 8 pounds and just literally a massive girl so like a lot of the stuff we got early on was didn't fit but I think when I think back to like my overall mindset and what I was trying to go for, I think there's a huge misconception with eco-friendly living is that like you have to do without. So like I think that's why a lot of people hear it and they're like, whoa, you know, like I can't have my regular X, Y, and Z. Being eco-friendly means I have to, yeah, go without. And so one thing that I thought was helpful as I was like thinking through whether it was a registry item or like trying to wrap my head around all this stuff, it wasn't necessarily that I had to say, look, I'm going to be a minimalist and I'm not going to have anything for the baby, right? Because like I'm a first time mom. I don't even know what I need half the time, right? Like people are sending me these like registry lists and I'm like, do I need this? Do I not? And so rather
Yeah.
than like develop a complex, because I did start to be like, oh my gosh, I want to be a minimalist, you know, but I don't know what I need. So I have all these like clashing things. I started to really think about it in terms of, okay, I'm going to do my best in terms of not registering for things that are like one purpose only. Like I'm going to try and think about multi-purpose items or things that are going to last a really long time. And then I'm also just going to give myself some grace and think, you know what? Number one, you're not going to get it right in terms of you'll probably get more stuff than you need,
Mhm.
both from yourself and then from other people giving it to you. Then you can like re-gift. When we talk about like really specific actions, I think people can take one amazing tip that I myself have just really gotten into lately is joining your local Buy Nothing group. They are amazing. I don't know how many folks that have tuned in have started to get into their Buy Nothing group, but they're either on Facebook or Buy Nothing has their own app, but I find that the Facebook groups are usually more active. They're hyper local groups that were designed to facilitate people just like re-gifting things to their neighbors. And I found specifically with baby and like toddler items, it's been a godsend. And I honestly wish I would have learned more about Buy Nothing before I had the kiddo because I didn't know about that.
Right.
But now, you know, people are giving away stuff like I mean, like walkers and swings and all these like really expensive things that I probably would have added to a registry had I not known. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about, kids stuff specifically is that it almost feels like a lot of the time it's there for like a moment and it's
Yeah.
useful or helpful for a moment. And then they grow so quickly that it, you then go end up putting it in storage. I think something that I definitely, love doing and have, the ability to do with my really close group of friends is like it feels like everybody has either had a baby or about to have a baby at perfect times to be able to just continue recycling the different products or items through the group of moms. And so I think that's also such a fun thing to be able to do that, once you're done with your lounger to be able to pass that off to somebody who, might be able to use it right away.
Yeah.
And it's also a great way to not have something that's just sitting in your storage room or just sitting in your house, but also be
Yep.
able to put it to good use and not have that person have to go buy the exact same thing that you have sitting in a closet somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's fun. And so yeah, you kind of have your own buy nothing group.
Yeah, exactly. I think like for me as a mom, I feel like and this was a really common question, especially like right before you become a parent and when you have kids that are in diapers, is just like the amount of waste that comes with wipes, diapers, plastic. It seems like you're going through so many all the time. And I know that there are cloth diapers, which I also want to talk about
Yeah,
as well, just because that's something that's always been such an interesting thing to me, but also one that I'm like, how do you
yeah,
do that, that maintain it to be clean, especially
yeah,
while on the go. But how was that for you? I mean, that part of it probably was challenging for you
yeah.
in the
Yeah, I mean, I literally I'm a germaphobe. And so for me, like the thought of cloth diapering at first just freaked me out.
yeah.
I was like, what am I gonna do with like human waste and my machine and what's gonna happen with that? And I mean, like I went through all of these things, but I also knew just from my work with Brightly, like how much stuff we're already putting into the landfill. And so for me, like the mental image of the amount of diapers that I knew I was going to go through, like sitting in a landfill was like so shocking to me that I was like, I'm going to get over this germaphobe bit and I'm going to like figure out how to make it work for my family. And so I'm going to talk about like, yeah, realistic cloth diapering, because I think a lot of us also have heard when you think about cloth diapering, you think about like, you actually have to fold it and you have a safety pin and like all of these kind of like old school, like our grandmother's version of cloth diapering,
Right.
which for a lot of us it's just too much work. Now there are people that do that and more power to them, but so for me what actually worked was number one, we cloth diaper, and I still do, about 75 to 80% of the time. So we knew that like when we were going out, we were just going to be okay with using a disposable. And then overnight, sometimes we use disposables, kind of depending on the age of your kid, because
Mm-hmm.
when they're newborn, anyway, there's like a little bit of nuance there. And so you can kind of go there. So first of all, I was like, I'm going to aim for as much cloth diapering as I possibly can, but I'm not going to like beat myself up if I can't do it. The other thing that I ended up doing was I looked around. So if you live in certain metropolitan areas in the United States, there's actually cloth diapering services, which is kind of cool. So like they will deliver clean cloth diapers to you on a weekly or whatever cadence that you need. And then you can give them a bag of the dirties if you want. So like if you don't want to deal with the washing yourself at your home, you don't have to. Now, I do think some of those services require you to do more of the like folding. So like for me, again, I was like, well, I don't know. And there was not a great service where I am in Seattle. So I kind of checked that one off the list. What ended up working out for me was I use a brand called Assembly, Essembly, and we actually sell the cloth diaper starter kit on Brightly because I'm such a fan of it. But what became so easy for me is number one, there's no folding, it's all snaps. And then so it's basically an inner diaper. And then the outer diaper is like this, it's made of recycled plastic bottles, which is super cool. It's been tested, it's been through the ringer. There's no, harmful chemicals getting on baby or anything like that. But the outer kind of goes around. So basically when the diaper gets wet, the outer prevents the wetness from getting through to the baby, on their clothing and stuff like that. So I started doing that. And then from a cleaning perspective, I went back and forth on what I was going to do. And I actually ended up finding now this is not the most let's talk about the trade-offs that we make when we do eco-friendly living. So they actually do make little tiny washers that I think are designed for people who live in apartments, but they have specific ones for cloth diapers. They're actually not too expensive. They're like $150, $200. And so I got one of those and I was like, look, if I use this, I did the cost benefit analysis, like cloth diapering can be kind of expensive to get up to going, but then you don't have to keep buying diapers. So for us, it actually ended up being cheaper, even with the purchase of this little washer. And I thought to myself, well, number one, I think I'm going to have more than one kid. So I'm like, we'll get use out of it from that perspective. And then I also said, you know what, when I'm done with this, I'm going to donate it to another mom that wants to try cloth diapering
Right.
too. So I didn't really think about it as like me buying another disposable thing. I was like, I'm going to use it this way. So that's the way I chose to do it. There are amazing, and there were many cloth diapering only Facebook support groups where like you can literally go on and say, help, this is my washer, what kind of cloth diapering routine should I do? And they will tell you. Like, those moms know every single kind of washer dryer, so they'll help you make it work within your own washer dryer right now. And we used our own washer dryer for a while before we got this little thing, and it worked fine. It was just more like, again, my level of ick.
Yeah.
That was more on me.
Yeah, I love the idea of like this little washing machine. There were also questions when it came to the cloth diapering, just also about wipes in general,
Yeah.
And how to reduce the waste there.
Yeah. So wipes are another thing where like, yeah, you can either choose, Assembly has like and there's a few brands that are doing this where you can have like really thin cloth wipes that you put like almost like a foam pump on the wipe to use as a wipe. So you can do it that way, or you can just choose to get, and you know, this kind of takes me to my next thought, which is like, okay, well, let's say I just want to do disposables. What do I then look for? And so you can do the same thing with wipes. So you can look for wipes that are made with, you know, kind of tree-free alternatives like bamboo, lyocell, all those types of materials. They do make wipes. I think even Costco, I found, was selling some when I was looking. So there are brands out there that are making both disposable wipes and disposable diapers with better materials. Now, there are a lot of brands, there's a few brands that have come up that said they've made quote unquote biodegradable. And so I tell people, like, it's a lot easier to make a biodegradable wipe than it is a whole diaper. The diaper has all these little components in it that it's super, super hard to get away from, like plastics, or at least like things that aren't going to degrade as fast as you think so. So again, though, be eco-friendly is a spectrum. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. And that's what we talk a lot about on Brightly's Instagram account and on our, on the podcast, on everything. But it's like, what level of perfection are you aiming for? Then like take it down a step, because it's not going to happen.
I love that. The other thing that seemed to come up a lot, and I noticed this myself just with my toddler, is just the amount of waste and plastic that comes with snacking for children. If it's you go to someone else's house and you're snacking, you're keeping snacks in the car. I have those awesome stasher bags that I know are really great for reusable Ziploc bags that work really well. They're easy to wash. But there were a couple questions just about like reducing plastic waste with snacking, and also you know, Ziploc bag alternatives for things like meat, where you want to be keeping things sanitary.
Yep. It's a great question. And so we're like obsessed with like food waste and food conversation at Brightly too. I think that's like one of actually the easiest, you know, places that you can get started on an eco-friendly journey. Is not only like, you know, thinking about doing a few meatless swaps once a week, but it's also like, okay, even if you take that out of the equation, how do you cut down your food waste in general? And so, you know, obviously meal planning and stuff works, but when we think about specifically, you know, kids' food, one thing that I found to be so helpful with Brooksley specifically, like, I mean, obviously we have some of those, you know, packeted purees, like packeted kind of, you know, vegetable and fruit options, which, yeah, there is plastic and stuff involved. But I figured, same thing with my cloth diaper analogy here. I was like, I'm going to use those when we need to, like when we're on the go and there's really not another option. I'm going to make sure I'm buying organic and, you know, supporting companies that are, you know, doing responsible sourcing as much as possible. But at home, what we like to do is, like Brooksley, I like to say, is like made us be food waste champions, because if we have like vegetables or fruit or anything that's going to go, you know, about to go bad, or it's starting to go there, I just throw it in. We use something called a Beba baby cook. It's like a little steamer. You probably have one too. We all love this thing. Another gadget, people, that like, I was like, oh, do I get this? Like, what happens when I don't need to make purees for the baby? But I mean, I use the thing all the time still, right? Do you still use it?
I mean, it steams. That's why it's like, and I'm very open about the fact that I'm really not so great in the kitchen. But this thing, I mean, it's literally, you can puree and steam, and you can steam food for yourself as well.
Yes, it's so good. Yes. And so that's what we do. And so like the other day I used it to make mashed potatoes for myself. Like, that thing is awesome because it, so it basically steams the food. You can blend it up all in one. And so we use that. And so starting when we did baby-led weaning with Brooksley, I think we kind of did like half and half. We did some purees and some baby-led weaning stuff. And we started to make purees at home with our own stuff, super easy with that gadget. And then one thing that I've also found to be really fun is we will make extra food for her, and then we actually have this on the Brightly site, and we'll link to it, but I use one of those silicone muffin molds to like make pre-portioned like either puree or just entrees for her. We throw it in the freezer, and then we have these like little pucks that we just like put in a stasher bag. It's time for her to eat. We just take one of those pucks out of whatever it is and we defrost it. And so that's been just such an awesome way for us to like freeze food that we were making for ourselves and now we want to give to her. So I think there's a lot of like, and I am like obviously a very busy person, as are you. Like I'm a founder of our company, I'm a new mom and all these things. So everybody keep like, my in-laws were like, how do you have time to make your baby's food? And I'm like, I mean, it's just like an extra step when I'm cooking anyway. So I'm not like one of those types that's going to make her a bunch of her like standalone entrees, but like it's been surprisingly easy. Like, and I'm not one to like gloss over that.
Yeah, I mean, another one of those things when you talk about the little silicone muffin molds is if you're pureeing fruit is the popsicle molds as well. Those silicone,
Yes.
those are also really great ways that I found to be able to reuse things. And even if it's a pouch that's like, we used in the car and only half was eaten, I have been putting it in the little popsicle mold because they're, fruit and they're sweet. And then that's another great way to reuse them before they.
I love that. That's such a good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think like, all these different kind of tips and tricks that you guys are talking about on Brightly that are really just great small ways to make changes as parents, especially parents to little ones that are, seem to be having a lot of different things that you end up throwing away or,
Yep.
Not needing very quickly is to be able to, have other moms or other families or Facebook groups that you can be able to recycle the products, continue to put them to good use so people don't have to continue buying so much stuff. And doing that with clothes as well. Obviously, like these gadgets are, great when you need to use them. And a lot of them are super pricey. So being able to give them to another parent is great. And then the clothing part is, I always talk about the fact that my mom has saved so much of the clothing that she had for my sister and I, which I thought was so crazy. But now that I have two girls, I'm like, this is perfect. And they'll often be in clothes that my sister and I wore, which I'm like, 32 years later, that's
amazing.
Very impressive. I want to also just talk about, we talked about kind of the parent hacks that you can do and change to reduce your waste. But when it comes to just like life hacks, I know that you just did one on reusable makeup wipes, which I've been using for a really long time.
Yeah.
But are there other little things that are kind of quick fixes? People can watch this and, or, watch it later and look in the newsletter and see different things that you can kind of finish this video or finish listening and go into your home and make kind of three different, quick fixes to be more environmentally friendly and more sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question. So, I think for me, a big part of becoming a conscious consumer in general is kind of this mindset shift that we talked about earlier. So like one thing that I find just once you start thinking about it, it's hard to unthink about it, is just plastic, single-use plastic specifically, right? Like plastics are in almost everything. We can't just all go plastic free 100%. It's not possible, but we can really think strategically about single-use plastic. And so you talked a little bit about using like things like a stasher bag instead of a Ziploc bag. You also could do the old thrifty mom trick where you rinse out those Ziploc bags and use them again. My mom used to do that. And like, that's something, if you hand wash and you had something in there that wasn't, specifically, germy, then you can do it that way too, which is one interesting thing to think about. Obviously, we also like to think about saran wrap. And so I think there's, people have tried like beeswax wraps and stuff. For me, beeswax wraps like work sometimes they don't. I think a lot of us have had that experience. So we actually at Brightly, we're about to launch reusable and dishwasher safe bowl covers. So they're like made of this fabric that's actually using recycled plastic bottles, really similar to the cloth diaper outer like I talked about, but like just using that to cover a bowl or something like that. Because I mean, you know, when kiddos don't eat their meal and you've got this like little plate for them, half the time I'm like, okay, I'm not going to throw this away. I need to put this back in the fridge. I just put something like that over and use the drawstring, and that works really well. So just like, yeah, thinking about these single-use plastic things in your home. And as you get, you know, into the kitchen and you start to see it that way, well, then you'll say, well, wait a second, like I'm in the bathroom now and I use all those like little like flossy, you know, like they look like, I don't use them, but I've seen them like you always see them on the street, like as trash, like those little like mini flosser type things.
Like called wisps or something.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, like that kind of thing where it's like, just use regular floss. Like
Yeah.
we don't need that extra plastic. Same thing goes with like razors. There's so many cool plastic-free razor solutions out there. So again, I think thinking a lot about plastic use is one really big tip. Another one would just be food waste, like we talked about earlier. So, you know, my husband and I almost like treat it like a game in our house where it's like, did we use up everything that we bought? Because it's like a challenge for us. So like we try to do meal prepping and meal planning, but listen up, we're busy. Like, has anyone here tried to plan a week's worth of meals lately on your own? Like, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll do like one or two, but like just give yourself some grace there because that's not happening. But at least you can maybe have some staples in your house that like, you know, we always buy broccoli, and I know there's like a few different recipes that I can do with the broccoli. So like having those kind of go-to recipes in your repertoire to be able to, you know, not drive yourself crazy having to pre-plan, but making sure you're like going through stuff like that is really nice. And then, yeah, using that baby steamer thing we talked about earlier, that can be helpful. But I love thinking about food waste. I think that's another thing. And then the final tip is just, we talked a little bit about this too, but kind of clothing and textile waste. So, you know, again, I think, you know, you and I were about the same age. We grew up in a time where like everybody was like getting those new looks all the time. It was like Forever 21. Like we were just like getting these cheap, cute looks all the time. And that was just like a really big part of the culture. One thing that I'm really excited about is like Gen Z specifically loves thrifting. They love thinking about, you know, swapping clothing amongst one another and not treating clothing pieces like they're so expendable. You know, I think our answer to that back in the day was to just send everything to Goodwill, but I think, or donate it. And I think, you know, unfortunately, a lot of things don't actually end up being reworn. Like it's kind of this happy place that we put stuff in our mind, but like, you know, in the, especially with adult clothing, I think baby and kids clothing typically has a much higher percentage of reuse, which is good.
Right.
But adult clothing is so specific and it can be really hard to get stuff to be reused. So I think the solution to that is to just be really thoughtful about what you bring in your home. Like if you see something that's trending, is there a way that you can thrift it? Or maybe you have like, you know, this, if you're not a mom yet, or even if you are a mom, maybe you've got this like group of girlfriends like you were just talking about that you've swapped baby stuff with. Well, maybe you can swap clothing with, you know, if especially, you know, if you're getting, I'm sure you get gifted a lot of stuff, Katherine, you know, just there's a lot of stuff coming through. So like, how do you have like a little situation where everybody is able to benefit without necessarily going out and buying their own thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's it was something that I really was aware of, especially when I was just recently pregnant, is like the maternity clothing thing and
Yes.
you know, how a small amount of time we use those, depending on how many times you are pregnant in your life.
Yeah.
Just being able to use those with girlfriends, the products that you use when you're pregnant, they really do have kind of like a start and end date of when they might be useful to you, and being able to use them and then be able to have, you know, your close group of girlfriends, or if it's a sister or sister-in-law. I think that was something that it's also, you know, really fun to be able to take your products or your clothing and give them to someone who, you know, would need to use them in that moment. And then maybe if you need them again at some point, they're still in a good condition to come back your way. So I think that these are all things. And my sister always talks a lot about, you know, this kind of world that we're in of, you know, sending things to people, gifting things to people, and, you know, what you do with them. And is that, you know, finding someone who really would love them and needs them, or is it, you know, just finding different ways to not have your waste in your house. And
Yep.
when I'm saying that, I'm talking about products, beauty products. That was another big question. And I know that we're out of time here, but just like beauty products, skincare products, cleaning products,
Yep.
clothing. Like there's, you know, also being smarter when you buy things, buying things that will last you a really long time and not something that's going to last you like a month and then,
Yep.
you know, it's not useful anymore. So I think these are all great things to walk away and be more conscious of, and just be able to make small changes that hopefully make an impact, and then increase the changes as you kind of master the little ones to make it in a really encouraging and exciting way to make a difference.
Yeah, no, well, thank you so much for having me, Catherine. You know, we've got a lot of tips on brightly.eco. Like, that's actually our web address too. Everybody's like, you mean .com? Like, no, .eco, like eco-friendly. And we'll, always a pleasure to connect with you. And yeah, like this, we could probably talk about this for like 3 hours.
I just am like, and what about this? And what about that? But we'll definitely, you know, we'll put all the links to Brightly, and also the products that you mentioned in the newsletter, and also just in the description of this video, because I know people will kind of want to come back and be able to say like, what is that change I can make?
Yeah.
And kind of get better with it. So thank you so much, and you're doing such awesome work, and I'm really excited to have learned so much from you, and to continue to explore this whole account that you have. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
Bye. Have a good day.
Bye.